I think I first heard about Taika Waititi when the movie What We Do in the Shadows came out, which I thought was pretty funny, but it wasn't until Hunt for the Wilder People when I really started paying attention. Because that ended up being one of my favorite movies that year and one of my favorite movies of the last decade. To me, he just struck gold with that one, and it was a perfect mix of humor and heart. And then he directed Thor Ragnarok, which was pretty fun and easily my favorite Thor movie. I also went back fairly recently and watched Boy, one of his earlier movies, which I also liked. So when I heard he was making some sort of Hitler-Nazi satire parody thing, I was intrigued. The overwhelmingly positive audience response also added to my excitement. And the fact that it ended up on a lot of people's year-end lists did nothing but get me even more pumped to see it. So when it finally premiered around my neck of the woods, I immediately went to see it. And you know what? I thought it was fine. Not much more than that though. And this is one of those movies where my notepad is virtually empty. There just weren't a lot of things that I thought stood out to me as being either, well, bad enough or good enough to really grab my attention and to make me write it down. Don't get me wrong, it's undeniably a well-made movie on pretty much every level. It looks good, the score is good, the acting is really good, which you'd expect from a cast like this. Even the kid in the lead was pretty good. However, I will say that some of the jokes, well, I feel like they were better on paper and he just fumbled the delivery a tad bit. But for the most part he did a good job too, and I did like him, and he was a pretty charismatic lead. But I will also have to say that I think the kid playing his friend Yorkie stole the show here. He on the other hand nailed the delivery of every single line they gave him. And I would have loved to have seen more of him. He was just a bit underutilized in my opinion. But yeah, my point being, the acting here really isn't the problem overall. And neither is the story, because it's well constructed and compelling enough. And it follows this boy who's an ardent Nazi and loves Hitler so much that his imaginary friend is Adolf himself. Things sort of go from there as the movie explores the less lovely aspects of the Nazi regime. And it does get fairly dramatic at times too, but there's always a healthy dose of humor thrown into the mix as well. Which really just shows once again that Taika Waititi knows how to make a funny movie with a lot of heart. That being said, my biggest issue with this was that, well, I didn't think it was funny enough. It had a few genuinely hilarious moments, but for the most part I found it to be more amusing than laugh out loud funny. But it was consistently amusing, I'll give it that, and the people around me in the theater did find it to be way funnier than I did. And based on the overall audience reactions I've seen online, I'm probably in the minority on this one. And on average, I'd guess that most people would probably enjoy it more than I did. However, I did enjoy it. As I said, I thought it was fine. I didn't have any genuine issues with it. It wasn't poorly made and nothing was particularly poorly handled either. I even think the whole Nazi aspect was fairly well dealt with in this one. Although if we're talking dictatorship satires, the death of Stalin was a lot funnier in my opinion. But then again, that one didn't have nearly as a compelling story and as much heart as this one. So there's a certain balance you have to strike when making a movie like this. And I think that's about it. I think it's a fairly well-rounded and amusing movie. But would I recommend it? Yeah, I think so, especially if you're a fan of Taika Waititi. And even if you're not and you have no idea who he is, maybe give this one a shot. Because the odds are you'll enjoy it, or you know, you could not do that. After all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel, because that would be fantastic. And if you'd like, you can also support me on Patreon or PayPal through the links in the description. And as always, I appreciate you and thanks for watching.